Good evening. The world's premier talking shop, the G20, has wound down in Brisbane, Australia. The most sought-after leader this year was the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So what exactly was achieved over the last couple of days? That's on the news tonight. But first, as always, the headlines. The G20 backs India's stand on black money. Prime Minister Narendra Modi seeks new global standard on automatic exchange of tax information. After meeting the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister promises to look into the controversy of teaching German in Kendriya Vidyalayas. India and the European Union are all set to sign the civil nuclear deal next year. An agreement will focus on research and energy. The Islamic State releases yet another gruesome video of a beheading victim. This time, it's an American aid worker, Peter Kasich. And Saina and Srikanth make badminton history for India. They win the women's and men's singles titles in the China Open Super Series in Fuzhou. And our top story on the news tonight comes from Brisbane, Australia, where the G20 has endorsed Prime Minister Narendra Modi's pitch against black money. It's echoed India's stand seeking transparency as well as the disclosure of tax information on an automatic basis. In its demand to democratize international institutions, India also got support from other G20 members to reform the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, by the end of the year.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi raised the issue of untaxed money at the G20 summit. He said it is a key need for the economic and security challenges faced by the centre. He sought close coordination with the BRICS nation on the issue. He urged the tax havens to provide tax information according to existing treaties. He found support among the member nations of G20.
The Prime Minister made a strong pitch for black money. And he said that is a very important part of that is because it is India is doing their level best to get it, but because of certain rigidities, certain structures of law, certain situations that exist because of treaties, past treaties made many years ago. But despite that, India has been able to get a very significant part of that.
He felt that its repatriation was a key priority for his government, given that it also has not only economic implications, but also security-related implications and challenges.
This cooperation between different tax authorities to have greater transparency over tax and make sure there's greater fairness over tax, we made some real progress. There are now over 92 different countries and tax authorities properly sharing information.
Another key demand by India to reform the International Monetary Fund also found support among the members. The G20 leaders expressed disappointment over the slow pace of quota reforms, urging the US to ratify them to make the institution more effective and representative. A joint communique released after the G20 meeting said, if the reform does not happen by the year end, we ask the IMF to build on its existing work and stand ready with options for next steps. IMF Chief Christine Lagarde said that the agency will monitor implementation of measures pledged by G20 leaders to manage 2.1% growth in next 5 years.
We're going to continue doing that, and in the process of doing it, over the next 5 years, we'll be able to assess, compared with the list of proposed reforms, what they've actually done and how much that contributes to growth.
The quota reform, once implemented, will increase India's voting share from current 2.44% to 2.75%. India will then become 8th largest quota holder at the IMF, up from the 11th position. With inputs from Akhilesh Suman, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And on the sidelines of the G20, Prime Minister Modi had a delegation-level meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. During the meeting, Chancellor Merkel raised the issue of India's decision to drop German as an alternative to Sanskrit as the third language in Kendriya Vidyalayas. The German ambassador to India, Michael Steiner, had already raised this issue with the Indian government. He's hoping for a pragmatic solution. Modi assured the German Chancellor that he will look into this matter.
I think with all involved, respecting the laws of India, respecting the policy of India, respecting that you need on the one hand to preserve and foster your cultural identity. And part of that is, of course, Sanskrit.
Meanwhile, part of his people-to-people diplomacy, Brisbane rolled out the red carpet for Prime Minister Narendra Modi Sunday. He addressed a large gathering of the Indian community there, stressing on the importance of closer ties between India and Australia.
It wasn't probably as grand as the one in New York's Madison Square Garden 2 months ago, but a strong contingent of around 1 lakh Indians in Brisbane rolled out red carpet for Narendra Modi, the first Indian Prime Minister to visit them since Rajiv Gandhi 28 years ago. Addressing the Indian diaspora, Modi emphasized the need to have stronger relations between Australia and India.
Here in Brisbane and at this reception, I feel the sentiment of friendship between our people and the promise of a strong partnership in the years ahead. I am grateful to you for looking after the Indian community of nearly 100,000. Some have been here for generations. Some have come more recently, but they are really happy. Here, they are the bridge of friendship and understanding between us.
Earlier in the day, Modi also unveiled the statue of Mahatma Gandhi in Brisbane in his first bilateral engagement. Evoking Gandhi, Modi said his ideology could have been the answer to some of the key problems the world faces today.
मैं मानता हूं कि महात्मा गांधी आज भी दुनिया के लिए उतने ही रिलेवेंट हैं जितने कि वो अपने जीवन काल में थे। महात्मा गांधी के जीवन की बातों को अगर हम देखेंगे तो आज विश्व जिन समस्याओं से जूझ रहा है उसका जवाब ढूंढने में हमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं होगी।
Modi will now head for Sydney for a more formal bilateral engagement with Australia. He is scheduled to meet Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott for the second time in 2 months. In September, the two sides signed the civil nuclear deal. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And tomorrow in Sydney will be the big address at the Allphones Arena, which is going to be the equivalent of the Madison Square Garden address that the Prime Minister gave when he was in the United States. Meanwhile, talk about India's relations with another major bloc of nations, the European Union. India is now likely to sign a civil nuclear cooperation agreement with the EU, and it's likely to happen as early as next year. The European Union's ambassador to India, How Cravino, disclosed the deal, which will mostly focus on research and energy. He says both sides and the European Union are ironing out differences over exactly what language is going to be used in the draft. Now, the deal will provide a major boost to India's efforts in entering the elite nuclear suppliers group, considering just how much clout the 28-member European Union has on that global platform. Some domestic news now. In fresh political clashes erupted today in West Bengal's Birbhum district. One person was shot dead, another person was injured when alleged supporters of the ruling Trinamool Congress and the BJP clashed. Now, since last night, sporadic clashes between alleged supporters of the two rival parties have been reported from the area. Birbhum has been tense for a few days now after 3 persons were killed in Makra village last month. Leaders from both parties have since unsuccessfully tried to enter that village. Meanwhile, all the other news from across the country in Nationwide. Batting legend and Rajya Sabha MP Sachin Tendulkar adopted a village in the Nellore district of Andhra Pradesh. He adopted the Puttamraju Kandrika village under the Prime Minister's Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana. He will allocate a little over 2.7 crores from his MP Local Area Development Fund for the village. 12 people died and 4 others were injured when a bus carrying 16 people collided head-on with a truck in Moradabad in Uttar Pradesh. The bus passengers were on their way to a religious event. Most of the victims were women. 5 infants, including 4 girls, died at the Dharmapuri Medical College Hospital in Tamil Nadu within just 12 hours. 3 babies were born in primary healthcare centres. They were later admitted to the hospital with respiratory as well as other complications. Hospital authorities claim that there was no negligence on the part of the doctors there. All right, we're going to take a break here in the program. When we come back, it's the signature campaign of the Modi government so far, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. But what about the thousands of tons of solid waste that we produce every year? Managing that waste is becoming a problem. We'll tell you why when the news tonight returns. Welcome back to the news tonight. I'm Zaka Jacob. For the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, solid waste management is the biggest challenge. Now, the lack of urban management planning has only made that problem worse. In our special series on urban waste management, today we take a look at the story of garbage here in the national capital.
National capital Delhi generates over 8,000 metric tons of solid waste on a daily basis. Mumbai comes a distant second with 6,500 tons. The New Delhi Municipal Corporation told the Delhi High Court recently that by the end of 2020, Delhi will produce 17,000 tons of solid waste daily. Solid waste pollutes the air, water and soil. It directly impacts the food chain. But municipal authorities have neither the funds nor the machinery or even the techniques to dispose it.
We're not looking at garbage as a pollutant. It's contaminating the water, it's contaminating the air.
The Ghazipur landfill is spread across 72 acres. It's filled with plastic bags, waste from slaughterhouses and households. The pungent smell of methane gas fills the surrounding air, while the vultures hovering for carrion are a constant threat.
We are in the Ghazipur landfill area located in the central heartland of eastern Delhi. This landfill is infamously known for one of the biggest landfills in the Asia. And now, almost every day, it's a natural activity here that more than 300 rag pickers come here to collect almost 2,000 tons of waste dumped and collected from Delhi.
For the last 20 years, 2,000 tons of garbage are being dumped in Ghazipur almost daily. Of the 20 landfills since 1975, 15 are closed and 2 are suspended.
Burning of waste is the biggest source of dioxins release, and dioxins and furans are already carcinogens.
The situation becomes intolerable during the rains when the landfill starts sliding, causing loss of life and property in 2012. Municipal authorities take minimum responsibility in disposing waste. The government outsourced the disposal to private companies and voluntary organizations, but no accountability is fixed. Shrinking land in cities like Delhi is the main reason for these landfills. Municipal authorities and the state government are always at loggerheads.
Unless or until this land is provided by the government, the cost of management of this is exorbitant. You cannot.
Acting on the Delhi High Court's instructions, the civic authorities calculated that nearly 500 acres are needed for landfill sites. But no new location has been chosen yet, even as the authorities keep passing the buck. Rajkamal Rao's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
So every morning when you leave your garbage bag out, just think about that story for a moment, just how much waste Delhi is generating. Meanwhile, another problem we're going to face in the years ahead is the issue of energy, and particularly clean energy. India is targeting zero greenhouse gas emissions by the end of the century. We've got another 85 years to get there. But for a young country, which is looking at an era of amplified energy needs, even this could be a tall ask. Given that most of our power plants are dependent on the import of highly volatile fossil fuels, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is now suggesting that the only way out is green electricity. We explore today where India stands on this front. This is our Sunday special report.
The IPCC report warns of a severe, pervasive and irreversible damage from global warming unless steps are taken to reduce record levels of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So what are the means to limit climate change and build a more sustainable future?
Indian policymakers have a deadline now to phase out coal, oil and gas by the year 2100. While the date may right now seem distant, but experts agree the journey needs to start now. And therein is the problem. Coal is India's most essential energy source. It involves 58% of India's installed capacity. In 2013, coal produced 71% of our total electricity. Alternatives like petroleum are just not viable, while natural gas produces just 7% electricity.
Over 1.2 billion people, and with a growing population, we cannot possibly afford to go along in the direction that the developed countries have pursued in the past.
Like any other country, India too is banking on its abundant renewable energy sources. Power generation from these sources has gone up from 7.8% in 2008 to 12.3% in 2013.
has been the most popular, finding acceptance even in rural and remote areas. More than 7 lakh photovoltaic systems are currently generating 44 megawatt. When it comes to wind energy, India, the world's 5th largest producer with 68% installed capacity, while hydropower represents 18%.
Developed countries, the countries which are responsible for the global warming, first and foremost, they must chip in and help countries like India and Africa, Latin America and all that with funds.
India has an ambitious nuclear energy program with 21 nuclear reactors supplying 3.5% of India's electricity. Since 2008, India's nuclear fleet has raised capacity factor from 50 to 80%. With a capacity of 4,780 megawatt today, the government has a target of reaching 14,600 megawatt by 2021.
Construction cost, running cost is one aspect. But if, God forbid, an accident happens, then the costs become so high.
Renewable energy has the potential to create jobs at all levels, especially in rural areas. The emphasis on the massive renewable energy potential could even boost foreign investment and bring a green energy revolution. The government plans to add 30,000 megawatt energy from renewable sources in next few years. The proposal calls for 15,000 megawatt of wind power, 10,000 megawatt of solar power, 2,100 small hydropower projects, and the balance would be derived from biomass. Adding 30,000 megawatt from renewables is commendable, but the nation has a long way to go for this achievement. From Delhi, this is Kriti Mishra signing off for Rajya Sabha Television.
Some international news now, and a new graphic video by the Islamic State claims that American aid worker Peter Kasich has been beheaded. In the video, a masked militant stands over a decapitated head believed to be that of Kasich. The US-led campaign has not been able to halt the IS's attacks. Another horrendous video of an Islamic State beheading. The victim this time is 26-year-old US aid worker Peter Kasich, who is in captivity since last year. The video shows a masked militant standing over a severed head, believed to be that of Kasich. He also issues a warning to the United States.
We have seen a gruesome catalogue of beheadings, of crucifixions, of mass executions, of sexual slavery since the ISIL death cult started to consolidate its hold in eastern Syria and northern Iraq.
The beheading marks yet another sidelight to the rapid advances being made by the terror group. On Sunday, US military chief General Martin Dempsey met with Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi to discuss plans to increase America's assistance to battle the threat of the Islamic State. The US has repeatedly said that military force alone cannot root out the militant group without the support of Iraqi and Syrian governments.
We have communicated to the Syrian regime that when we operate going after ISIL in their airspace, that they would be well advised not to take us on. But beyond that, there's no expectation that we are going to, in some ways, enter an alliance with Assad. He is not credible in that country.
Although the video's authenticity has not been confirmed, the British-accented militant is alleged to be the executioner in previous beheadings as well. Kasich was captured last year while helping provide medical aid to Syrians. The video also shows what appears to be the mass beheading of several captured Syrian soldiers. The Islamic State has previously released videos showing the beheadings of 2 American journalists, James Foley and Stephen Sotloff, and of 2 British nationals, David Haines and Alan Henning. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. From the war against the Islamic State to another war, the conflict in Ukraine, where as the G20 summit drew to a close, relations between the West and Russia plummeted to another low, and this is again on the back of the Ukraine crisis. Russia came under fire as Western leaders squarely blamed President Vladimir Putin over the alleged annexation of Crimea, as well as actions taken to destabilize eastern Ukraine. Apparently disgusted, Putin quit the summit early, making an excuse that he needed to catch up on his sleep.
Friendless, snubbed and criticized. The Russian president made an early exit from the G20 summit, but not before he was subjected to a blunt business-like meeting with US President Barack Obama and a particularly tense interaction with UK Prime Minister David Cameron.
You don't invade other countries or finance proxies and support them in ways that break up a country that has mechanisms for democratic elections.
But I think President Putin can see that he is at a crossroads. If he continues to destabilize Ukraine, there'll be further sanctions, further measures, and there will be a completely different relationship between European countries and America on the one hand and Russia on the other. But he also knows there is a different path.
Under fire, Putin hit back, saying that there was still a good chance of resolving the conflict in Ukraine. Putin added that sanctions hurt both those imposed them as well as on whom they are imposed.
Ситуация в целом, на мой взгляд, имеет хорошие перспективы к урегулированию, как это не покажется странным, но все-таки созданы структуры с обеих сторон, которые...
A statement issued at the G20 summit also called for the prosecution of those responsible for downing Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 over eastern Ukraine. European leaders, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel, also threatened more sanctions on Russia for its support for the separatist rebels. However, Russia has persistently denied all accusations. On Monday, European Union foreign ministers will meet to consider further steps, including additional sanctions on Russia.
Yes, we
Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And we will deliver it.
Tell you what, it's a long flight from Brisbane all the way back to Moscow, so President Putin can catch up on all the sleep that he's lost over the last few days. All the other international stories in Global Buzz. In Kabul, a suicide bomber attacked the convoy of an Afghan politician, killing 3 people and injuring 20 others. Shukia Barakzai is a women's rights advocate, as well as an ally of the new president, Ashraf Ghani. She survived the attack. Terrorists attacked the convoy on their way to Parliament. No group has claimed responsibility so far. Meanwhile, Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif met with the new Afghan President Ashraf Ghani in Islamabad Saturday. He pledged his support to bring the Taliban to the negotiating table. Both leaders also talked about strategies to strengthen economic and trade cooperation. Ghani is on a 2-day visit to Pakistan until Monday. A surgeon from Sierra Leone who's critically ill with Ebola arrived in the United States for advanced treatment. Martin Salia is a citizen of Sierra Leone who lives in the U.S. state of Maryland. He was taken to a hospital in Nebraska after testing positive for Ebola. And the first full set of famous Beatles Abbey Road photographs are all set to go on auction next Friday. The estimated price is £70,000. The photo shoot was done by Ian McMillan. He's a good friend of the Beatles. From one famous British icon to another, Wayne Rooney, he's celebrating his 100th cap for England, and that too in some style. He scored a goal. We'll get you the details when the News Tonight returns. Welcome back to the News Tonight. This is big in the world of sport. Indian shuttlers Saina, Nehwal and Srikanth created history today by winning both the women's and men's singles challenges at the China Open. World number 5, Saina, defeated 17-year-old Akane Yamaguchi of Japan 21-12, 22-20. This is in the women's singles finals. The match lasted just 42 minutes. The bigger upset happened in the men's singles final, where Srikanth clinched his maiden Super Series title after defeating 5-time world champion Lin Dan of China. The 21-year-old won 21-19, 21-17 in a final which again lasted barely 46 minutes. This is the first time that any Indian male shuttler has won a Super Series premiere.
I think it's a great day for Indian badminton. I think to have Srikanth and Saina win at the China Open Premier Super Series is something phenomenal. We haven't had such victories, especially in the men's singles, for a very long time. And to have Srikanth win at the highest level in the world and to actually beat somebody like Lin Dan in the finals is something phenomenal.
All right, that is historic. We're just hoping that Srikanth now goes on to do better and greater stuff in his career in badminton. More sports news coming up in Sports Beat. Australian cricketer and captain Michael Clarke will miss the rest of Australia's one-day international series against South Africa because of injury. Clarke injured his troublesome left hamstring again. This was in the opening match in Perth. Wayne Rooney celebrated his 100th England cap by scoring a penalty to lead his team to a 3-1 win over Slovenia. This was in a Group E Euro 2016 qualifier at Wembley Saturday. The 29-year-old Manchester United forward shares the distinction with England's football legends like Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, David Beckham, Bobby Charlton and Billy Wright. Six-time world champion Roger Federer defeated fellow Swiss Stanislas Wawrinka in a semi-final tiebreaker 4-6, 7-5, 7-6. Federer will now face Novak Djokovic in the finals of the ATP World Tour Championship. And that's going to be one hell of an encounter to watch, Federer against Djokovic. That's a wrap of the news tonight, this Sunday edition. From me, Zako Jacob, and the rest of the team, thanks for your time. We'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time. Good night.